Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Julie Roginski here with Michelle Kinney. We have, sorry for the delay, a little bit of technical difficulties, a little health difficulties. Joe, a little under the weather today, nothing serious, but she did not want to gross anybody out by potentially throwing up on air. So she will not be here today, but may join the chat if she's up for it. Tara is just finishing some stuff up with her family. She will be here in a moment. But in the meantime, happy Saturday, Michelle.
Happy Saturday. Again, I'm sorry that we were late because apparently overnight my laptop decided to update. That's what happened. And then I turned it on and it was that like slow bar of death. So I apologize to everyone for being a little bit late. But here we are. Here we are.
And that's not the only thing that happened overnight. The Supreme
Mhm.
Court apparently pulled an all-nighter.
Yep.
I don't know if people are even aware because they might be waking up and not seeing this. I think this decision came down at 1 a.m. Eastern,
Yep.
which
Yep.
is like, I'm glad they were up for a change. But
doing their
I'm
jobs.
glad they were doing their jobs. But they prevented, which is good news, under the War Times Act. I'm going to read this headline.
Yep.
Supreme Court for now blocks deportation of Venezuelan migrants. And of course, two guesses as to who dissented. Justice Alito
and Thomas.
Justice, of course.
The two jesters.
Yeah, like I'm actually starting to believe. Well, first of all, my theory on Justice Thomas is he's so bitter from the 30-year-old. I'm sorry, more than 30-year-old, 33-year-old now.
I can't.
Hearing that he went through that I think he made a vow back in 1992 that he was going to screw everybody who he thinks was mean to him.
Yep.
And then the Hill hearings. And here we are for the last 30 years. That's what he's been doing. And Justice Alito is a different story. I actually, because I'm from New Jersey, I know people who knew Justice Alito well. And he's a bit of a different thing. So Justice Alito's dad, I actually know his sister, Rosemary Alito, employment lawyer, and a very good one. But his father was this very kind of by the book bureaucrat who worked in the New Jersey State House for a long time and ran something called the Office of Legislative Services, which was like, if you introduce a bill, they're the ones that kind of put it into form to make it look like it should be. But they're like a very Catholic family from like a what white working class town. Now it's become a lot more diverse. But aside from being very Catholic, which, that's whatever, no indication that Justice Alito was going to become the complete and utter destroyer of democracy. I actually went to a party and sat at the same table of Justice Alito once. And it was a really crazy party because of that same party, a very well-known astronaut whose name I will not mention for fear that he might, sue me. Got super wasted.
Oh, I probably know which one you're talking about.
Yeah,
I know you're talking
around. He's got New Jersey connection.
Yeah.
And he started screaming and shoving his wife, who was his then wife, they're not married anymore from what I can tell, who was also super wasted. And they started screaming the C word at her. And I'm sitting there at a table, like it was insane. And because they were beyond wasted. And I'm sitting there at a table, literally with Justice Alito, who is there. And first of all, you're sitting at a small, when you're at a dinner party and there are like multiple tables and you're at a table with somebody, you got to talk to them. Like it's kind of,
right.
There's not, it was like a 6-person table maybe.
Right. It's like you can't really ignore it.
Can't really not say anything
at that point.
He did not say a word to anybody. I mean, I literally sat down and I was like, "Hi, Justice Alito. I'm Julie Roginski. Good to meet you. Hello." And that was it. And not just to me, like there are people who are way, way, way more important than me at that table. Not a word to anybody. We're watching this astronaut practically get into a fist fight with his then wife, screaming the worst stuff at her. And we're all like this. We're all like, and Alito is just like, putting the food, like no personality whatsoever.
Well,
Like,
that's not
like
surprising.
it was like beyond weird. It was very creepy.
He's he
Yeah.
gives me he gives me like Opus Dei vibes, which, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of
Maybe
the what is this? Leonard Lee. I always is it Leonard or is it Leo?
it's
Which one
not,
comes
it's
first?
Leonard Leo, but I
Yeah,
don't, is he
they're
Opus
two
Dei
first
Leonard
names. I
Leo?
never.
I can't tell.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
Opus Dei for sure. Like I've been reading about his, I mean, and he's the one who bundles billions of dollars for the conservatives and to get super uber conservatives on the Supreme Court.
yeah.
And these, I mean, that's why there's so many like hardcore Catholics on the Supreme Court, including Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch. I mean, like I mean, no offense to anybody who's Catholic, but Jesus, I mean, it's the
No pun intended.
extremity, like of the extreme of these people, you know, forcing their beliefs and their values on the rest of us, while dismantling democracy and in the process is like pretty, you know, like how do we undo this?
But what
You
I
know,
don't get, like, I'm not quite clear with Alito. Like the Catholic stuff I get, right? Like he grew up
right?
Catholic, comes from a very Catholic family, very pro-life. Like, you know what? I'll,
Whatever.
we
Yeah.
understood. Like we knew what we
So
were
did
getting.
Joe Biden. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's kind
right.
of where
But I mean,
I'm.
like understood with Alito what we were getting as a justice.
Right.
And Teresa, Marlene, I do have the best stories. I should write a book, except that if I actually wrote a book and named these names, like I'd have to have a lot of lawyers look through it because there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of tea to spill. Maybe I
Right.
will. Maybe I will when they're all dead. Um, but um, um, the the weird part to me about Alito is it's not just it's not just like the pro life stuff that we knew we were getting.
Yeah.
It's this. Like, what is
There's
the
like some very extreme fascist ideology that's
yeah?
like the
Like
undercurrent.
what in Justice Alito's middle class upbringing in Hamilton, New Jersey,
Right.
his degree from Princeton University down the street from Hamilton, New Jersey, his work as the United States Attorney in New Jersey, like what part of that leads to suddenly saying that yes, the executive branch is king,
Right.
and we, the legislative branch, are not co-equal, because effectively, like that's what they all did with
Mm-hmm.
Trump in the United States, which is why, you know, I don't want to hear any crying from the Supreme Court about how Trump is inevitably going to ignore their their edicts, because the reality is they just gave him permission to do that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is like I think that the dog caught the car in several ways with with the Supreme Court. The first one being with Roe, although that didn't end up really being the you know, the consequential decision that we thought it was going to be in 2024. But I think also I don't think that the Supreme Court justices who allowed this to happen realized that they were relinquishing their own power and their own check on the other branches when they did this. I mean, because I think that they're starting to realize this, and I'm sure Roberts is.
How could they not? But I
I
gotta
know.
ask, like, how could they not? When you say the president of the United States cannot commit any crimes while in office,
Right.
inevitably, what he can then do. Hey, Kev Cox from London, tell us which part of London, because I love London. Where do you live? He what he did was what they basically did was effectively allow a mob to storm the Supreme Court the same way the mob stormed
Yep.
the Capitol. Trump could be at the head of that mob. Like let's say right now the Supreme Court says, no, Mr. President, you actually absolutely have to not just do your best, which is what they basically said, to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia, but you can't deport people without due process. Let's go a step further. You can't deport American citizens or imprison them without due process. Let's go a step further and say you can't imprison members of the Supreme Court without due process.
Right. I mean, because then you know what? Tara's here. I'm going to let her in. Hold on. Hi, Tara.
Hey,
Good
Tara.
morning.
Greetings. Sorry, guys. We had a little family planning meeting for Easter tomorrow that went a little
Oh,
overtime. So
that
I'm
is
here.
okay.
Got to see you guys. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. We're just
Happy
talking about the
Saturday.
Supreme Court decision that came down at 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern. And of course, the dissents were, as we would expect, Alito and Thomas, because
course.
they're only originalists when it applies to their ideology. And
Clarence Thomas has some nerve, okay? His black ass would be like right back in the fields, okay, if it weren't for maybe in the house, if it weren't for a lot of these things. And he's the first one to question certain constitutional rights and things. Like, I just can't with Clarence
Well,
Thomas.
but you know why, Tara? We talked about this right before you got on. Like, I think my point was that Clarence Thomas is super bitter from the Anita Hill hearings, and this is his way of like.
Yep.
But I'll go a step further because you mentioned the whole race thing. I think that Clarence Thomas is bitter because he got into Yale Law School. He believes on merit, and he thinks everybody looked down on him and all of these fancy law firms said you only got in because of affirmative action. So Clarence Thomas said, let's get rid of affirmative action for everybody so nobody has to go through what I went through. P.S. I have no idea why Clarence Thomas got into Yale Law School, but I will tell you that if he graduated from Yale Law School, chances are he did a very good job there because you could get in for whatever reason, but you can't graduate. So he should F over it.
You're 100% right. Clarence Thomas is bitter Barry. And it's if you ever want to find out more about why Clarence Thomas is the way he is, just listen to the Slow Burn series about his life. I was unaware of how bitter he was and how aggrieved he actually was, which explains so much of the self-hate now. And I was like, wow. I mean, it makes complete sense. Slow Burn, that podcast, I forget what season it is, a couple of years ago.
It's like season like 3 or 4, I think.
Yeah, it was like 3. Yeah, it was a couple of years ago because my husband and I listened to it on our drive to Florida. So it was like, so we like binge listened to it. And it really made so much more sense. Clarence Thomas was actually like a liberal, like borderline, like Black Panther, pro-civil rights, like let's go out there and fight for everything. And then there was a turn because he was not, he was, his capabilities and his intelligence and all of that was questioned because of his race. And he was rejected when he thought he should have been accepted. And his whole life has been about retribution. And now he's waited 30 years. He's played possum for 30 years because he used to be the guy that never asked questions. He just kind of sat there and was very quiet. Now it's payback. And it's scary.
It's really, and then somebody who said, Wisdom's said, look at who he married. Yeah. What's interesting about who he married is she was in a cult, like legit.
Yeah, a legit cult.
Legit weirdo cult. And then she got out of the cult and now she's in a different cult and it's called MAGA. Right?
Yep.
So like, because if you have that kind of addictive personality, like I've always said, right? If people, like I know a lot of people I care about, people I love who had alcohol problems or drug problems. And there's no shame in that. It's an illness. But then when they recover, they have to channel their energy, their addiction into something else. They become huge runners.
Oh yeah.
But that and the same thing I assume with her. And by the way, like fantastic, zero shame to that. But Ginny Thomas was in a cult. I guess got out of this weirdo cult when he married her, and then now this woman is a true believer. And for them, to say with a straight face that they don't discuss this stuff at home, like give me
bullshit.
She was leaving crazy voicemails on Anita Hill's answering machine years after the confirmation hearings. I mean, like, and then obviously you had a hand in getting people to January 6th. So I guess we'll never know because there are certain people on the January 6th committee that didn't want that information to be public.
Our good friend Denver Riggleman's firm was the one that he was a technical advisor for the January 6th committee. And he has a digital firm, and this is what they do. They do forensic analysis and all of that. And they're the ones that uncovered the text messages between Mark Meadows and Ginny Thomas and all those other things. And there were some folks on the January 6th committee that we will not name. But I suggest people read Denver Riggleman's book, The Breach. That's why he wrote it, because he saw that there were political forces there on the January 6th committee that were cherry picking certain information because it was opening up a very tangled, ugly web. But that was one of the things that they were not allowed to pursue more vigorously, along with the money and where that money went and what she was involved in. It was a very ugly thing. But anyway, Denver Riggleman and his folks, they uncovered that. And it was
that's such bullshit, Tara. I actually didn't know that. And I love Denver. Denver is fantastic. Like,
yes.
Yeah, he's the best.
Riggleman, I think he just started a Substack, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and he does this podcast with Amy McGrath called what do they call it? The Barrel of Truth or something.
I don't know, something with Barrel, yeah.
He's a co-owner
of the distillery
with his awesome wife. So
he's such a good guy. He runs a distillery down in Virginia and also another one up in the Poconos in Pennsylvania.
We're gonna have to do a field trip.
We're gonna have to do a field trip to the Poconos.
I keep telling you guys, come down. Silverback Distillery is our favorite bourbon whiskey. They have a honey whiskey that's unbelievable, and they just won another award. His wife is the distiller. She's badass, Christine. He calls her the hooch mama.
But anyway, so the point is, like, that's really bullshit what you just said. I didn't know that. Because like,
I
keep saying this, and I actually want to focus on this a little bit because it's broader than just the January 6th stuff. It's our money that was being used on the January 6th committee. I want to know what the hell Ginny Thomas was up to. I want to know about the money trail. The same way that I want to know why the hell my taxpayer dollars are paying to send 238 migrants to some hellhole down in El Salvador. It's our money. And I'm not a child, and I don't want to be protected from the big bad truth. Like, I want to know, and then let me make my own decisions.
Right.
But this whole like big brother, I'm gonna, for the sake of democracy, we're not gonna talk about what the Supreme Court justice's wife is up to. Like,
I don't even know if it was for that.
I want to know.
I don't even know if it was for the sake of democracy. I think it was just like, let's not go there.
It
right.
Was,
I mean, that's kind of what I got.
Without opening up a can of worms here. And we can, Julie, we can talk about this offline just because there's some political sensitivities here. But
sure,
it basically was about, we want the focus to stay on Donald Trump, and that the other stuff that opens up into this really ugly world of who was involved could potentially take the focus off of Trump's wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And so I hear that, but I agree with you. We should have known the full scope of this shit.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty extensive. And without knowing the full scope and context of it, people don't fully understand how broad this really is, and how like there were a lot of people involved. There was a lot of organization, a lot of money, and a lot of tentacles here that should have scared the shit out of people so they understand it's bigger than just Donald Trump. But but that was the thought process.
And not just that. But first of all, now the January 6th committee's over. Give it over. I want to see. Like, that's one. Two. I think the impression that has been left for a lot of people is Donald Trump gave this speech and spurned on a lot of wacko, poor, MAGA-ites from bumfuck, wherever they all came from, to Washington, who are not really relevant to anything, to go and storm the Capitol. And the reality is they don't know the extent to which those people were used by really, really powerful people in Washington.
Yep.
Who continue
they're pawns.
They're pawns. And by the way, not just Donald Trump, who's back in the White House, but from what I'm hearing now, people associated with the Supreme Court. And I want to know who, by the way, my taxpayer dollars are also paying their salaries.
Yep.
Like Clarence Thomas he's got a lot of money because a lot of rich people give him RVs and
Harlan Crow.
But he prefers Walmart parking lots and RV trips, Julie. Come on, he's just a regular guy. Don't pay attention to the billionaire trips on private jets to Bali or wherever the fuck they went.
And the yacht. Remember the yacht? Like the picture of the yacht, like many yachts, like somewhere like literally in Bali or like off the coast of Australia. I mean, but his technical salary is paid by me and you and everybody who's American on this chat. Sorry, the London guys. Sorry, not you. But luckily for you, not you. But like, I want to know. Like, I want to know what the hell they're doing with my money. It's not a unreasonable question. It's not an unreasonable request.
No, it's not. And
Shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be.
And I would go so far as to say, okay, yes, Donald Trump is a huge problem here, but I would say, and maybe I'm wrong here, so correct me, please. Donald Trump is kind of a symptom here. Like he's a symptom of a larger problem. And I think that that's where that information and that part of the investigation could have been broken open into a larger cancer that has metastasized.
Yep.
Not only into the Republican Party, but for the rest of the country and all three branches of government.
Mm-hmm. But see, that's the thing. They were thinking that the American people have a very short attention span.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we start talking about all of that, then that requires self-reflection on a larger societal level. And God forbid people start to have some self-reflection and thinking like, what did I do? And what did I enable? No, we don't want that. We've got to stay singularly, myopically focused on Donald Trump is bad and he's responsible. And that's all the American public can take. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a mistake. I think that was a mistake. Because there should have been more. People appreciate context, and sometimes you have to provide some of that. You want to talk about taking tough medicine. Sometimes you need to. It's kind of like slavery or the civil rights movement, where it's like we don't want to talk about all the other things,
which is why they whitewash history.
You know what?
Let's just focus on civil rights. You know what I mean? You can't do one without the other.
That's such a good point, because the part that I think is such a failure of this country, and people from Europe. You tell me if I'm right about how you approach history versus how the United States approaches history. We are so obsessed with our moniker of being the exceptional country, that American exceptionalism, that we can never acknowledge that parts of our history were really, really bad. Like the Germans, to their credit, have no problem acknowledging that parts of their history were really, really bad. Right? I don't know how they're taught. I lived in London for a while, but I never obviously went to school there. So people from England, you tell me. But I assume there are parts of your history that are taught in your schools, colonialism, all of that stuff, slavery for that matter, that probably is taught as a dark stain on your history.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
definitely with the Germans.
Right? And the Germans, I know for sure, because I actually spoke to a bunch of Germans about this. But in the United States, like when I was going to school, and I'm curious to see what happens when my son starts learning. He's only in 7th grade, but in a few years when they start learning American history in a real way, like I remember, and I went to a really good school, and I remember being taught about the Civil War. Like it was a war between the states. Yes, one side wanted slavery, the other didn't. Yada yada yada. Let's all go to Gettysburg for the field trip. Right,
right. Which is a beautiful place, and everyone should go there.
Gettysburg.
I went to
Here's
Gettysburg.
An inside joke about Gettysburg.
Why? What happened to Gettysburg?
Well, I went.
We'll tell you in the chat.
Okay. No, I can say some. I don't know which part of the Gettysburg that you're laughing about, because there's a larger Gettysburg thing here too.
I'm talking about from back in the day. Someone that always wanted to.
We worked with. Oh my God. Okay. Let's just. Okay. This is really funny. I won't say who. Okay. We're not going to say who, but there was somebody that we worked with, a man who was obsessed with Gettysburg and bringing the entire team to Gettysburg. It was like his obsession, and he wanted to spend all this money bringing the whole team there. Like, and it just anytime they would like dangle something like shiny over here to get him distracted and not do that, he would come right back to it.
Yeah.
And it just cuckoo pants. Like I love Gettysburg.
Go visit Gettysburg, yes, right? The history there is amazing, but like
it had less to do with that. It was very cultish, but it had less to do with that and more about centering himself in the field trip so that he could be the historian and tour guide, and so that he could all tell us these big lofty things and these long ass speeches about. Listen, I can't. Listen, if you know, you know. If you know, you know.
That's my point, right? That's the stuff that we were taught about the big lofty, like Pickett's chart. Right. I don't even know, I'm making this up because I can't remember. But like all of these different things that happened at Gettysburg, without really talking about the fact that, wait a second, for 400 years, the United States had a big stain before it was even the United States, or however many years. It was a major stain on this country that lasted and continues to last It's not like it was over in 1865 when the Civil War was over and then everybody moved out and kumbaya.
No,
Right.
no, we
how-
effed up the end game there in a big way.
For
Yeah.
100 more years,
Right.
100 more years. It wasn't
More,
until, like,
more.
By the way, I see
hello,
people
was a
guessing
thing.
in the
Hello.
chat. I see
Yeah.
people guessing in the chat, and all I'm going to say is there's a whole lot of nothing. But keep going, Julie.
All right.
Yes.
So that's the
That's
whole
why
thing.
they're trying to erase history, Julie.
Yeah.
That's why Donald Trump and the rest of them are trying to erase history with the Smithsonian's and coming for the Black History Museum, because they don't want people to know the truth of what happened.
Right.
Yes, America was great, but we also had the stain of slavery and like lynching tens of
continuing
thousands
to
of
do-
people, domestic
we're
terrorism
continuing to
on
do
Black
it
folks.
now. But that's my point. We're continuing to do it now because if they think they need to protect us from what the hell Jenny Thomas and Clarence Thomas and whoever else, I haven't listened to this.
Right.
I haven't read Denver's book. I actually will now that I didn't know he wrote one.
It's
but
really good.
yeah, I will read it. But like the point is why? And the reason is, God forbid we suddenly start losing our exceptionalism. God forbid we actually acknowledge that maybe, thank you. Yes, Krista, you're so right. The Trail of Tears. I think I was an
Oh my
adult.
God.
That.
But I mean, what does it say
Yeah.
that the president of the United States in the last term and now in his term has portraits of Andrew Jackson hanging in the Oval Office? I mean,
Yep.
what does that tell us?
Yep. Didn't he replace, who did he replace to put it up there? Like
I don't
he
know.
replaced like, I forgot who, but
it
like
George
someone
Washington?
better than Andrew fucking Jackson.
I think it was George
Right.
Washington. What's didn't he say?
Maybe.
George Washington?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's
so
like he replaced Obama to put up that propaganda picture of him at the assassination.
Oh,
attempt. How
Jesus. I know.
disgusting.
how about the big like MAGA controversy that Biden took down the bust or moved the bust of Winston Churchill out of wherever Donald Trump had it. And suddenly we're now disrespecting Winston Churchill. Like we're disrespecting Winston Churchill, the man who literally stood up to fascism before anybody else.
That's right. Before the
man-
Americans did.
Before the Americans did, the man who warned against Stalin and did the Iron Curtain speech in Missouri before anybody else. That's the guy that Joe Biden disrespected. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm going to go with no.
Yeah. That's
a
a
whole
no
lot
for
of
me,
no.
Yeah.
And well, and here's the thing too, is that to your point, Julie, the American exceptionalism that we have a tendency as Americans to be in a trance of our American exceptionalism and the beautiful stories that come with the origins of this country's history. But of course, with that comes a lot of ugly. And I think that, I mean, that's any country, right? But us especially, we're this shining city on a hill with a whole lot of warts that we don't want to look at. And I mean, that even goes, yes, for African Americans, for the Native Americans, for women. But at the same time, we are coming up on the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country. Now, last night in Boston was the 250th anniversary celebration of Paul Revere's ride through Boston, a 16-mile, I believe, on horseback.
On the 18th of April in 1775. Yep.
1775. One if by land, two if by sea. This was arguably the ride through Boston that saved the country because it warned that the British were coming. And I think it's a reminder, at least for me, I get like all choked up about this stuff because it's a reminder to us that this country's foundation was built on saying no to tyranny, saying no to kings, saying no to being taxed without, taxation without representation. And, these were regular people. Like Paul Revere was like a dentist by day he
was a silversmith.
Yeah, but then I read something today that he like did dentistry too. Like these were just like random regular people. And I was watching this. So let me just show this really quick. Hold on.
No,
Olympus.
he didn't fall off his horse. He was captured.
Rafi is very interested in this story right now.
I'm like a
Rafi.
Paul Revere nerd, but yeah, he was he was captured. I don't think he fell off his horse because he was drunk. He went.
That would be funny though. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's not. Yeah, he didn't make the whole trip, right? They
It was
captured
William
him.
Dawes. It was William Dawes and Paul. I'm such a nerd about this. It was William Dawes and Paul Revere who
Okay.
right. I don't know. Paul Revere got all the glory, but it
Paul
was
Revere used to silver to fix teeth. Okay, that's where that came from. So that's why I got that. Okay, so there's this. So I don't know if you can see it. Let me find another picture here. Hold on. Okay, so they on the Old North Church where the two lanterns, right? The one if by land, two if by sea, to let people know. There were projections yesterday. And I'm gonna read these here. Let the warning ride forth once more. Something about tyranny. Sorry, I can't see. The big one, though, in the middle that really got my attention was 1 if by land, 2 if by DC. This is the edit that people are making to this. And I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more of this in the protest signs and rallying cries is 1 if by land, 2 if by DC. Because what? Because the tyranny and the king are all ruling down on us and raining tyranny down on us from Washington, DC. And I feel like we are called upon again in this country because we're not living in normal times. This requires abnormal reaction to it. I think there needs to be an uprising from people in this country that we have not seen in a century or more. And, you know, I've been pissed off thinking that, okay, the 250th anniversary next year of this country. Oh no, Donald Trump's going to be president. It's so awful. Terrible. But you know what though? I actually see a little bit of beauty in all that because I think that we are going to be reminded once again, as we were 250 years ago, that no effing kings, no kings.
Yes.
And I think that this can serve as a reminder and an inspiration to all of us. And, you know, I went on the White House's YouTube page today and they've been putting together these highly produced, American Revolution videos. And of course, they've turned the comments off on all of them. But I'm like, no, you don't get to tell this story. You don't. Because it was people like you that were trying to suppress and oppress a whole group of folks. Like it's people like us that founded this country, like regular people. And it will be, once again, it'll be regular people that save it once again. I hope.
Yeah,
that's right.
And by the way,
here, as they say in the British Parliament.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are going out to protest today. Please stay safe. Wonderful. Fantastic. But it's working. And I just want people to know, like, it's working. And two things happened over the last 24 to 48 hours that showed me that they're scared.
Yep.
And here's one, right? One is that when Trump was asked about Abrego Garcia at the White House, first, a few days ago was like, no way, no how, he's never coming back. Suddenly now he's like, well, you have to talk to the lawyers about that. You have to defer.
Yeah, he coffee boyed it, Julie. He was like, I had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
I talked to the lawyers.
Yeah, so that was one. And the other is last night, suddenly they're like, oh shit, that letter to Harvard where we basically said we want DEI for conservatives, which of course the anti-DEI administration, of course, wants DEI. They just want it for people who are MAGA. I guess somebody would have to tell the admissions officer that they love Donald Trump in order to get their quota into Harvard. I mean, it's like insane.
Outrageous.
Suddenly they're like, oh, wait, that was a mistake. We weren't supposed to send that letter. That was an internal draft and that got sent to Harvard. And it's Harvard's fault for not checking with us to make sure that it wasn't
right.
Like Harvard gets, So Harvard gets.
I wrote this last night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you did. I love it. Like, yeah, okay. But what this tells me is, aside from their completely bombastic bullshit, is that they are scared. Like they're starting to see that maybe they can't run roughshod. And I think it kind of began when regular farmers and Iowans started showing up to Chuck Grassley's town hall. And it wasn't to talk about tariffs. I mean, maybe it was also, but it wasn't to talk about tariffs and how much tariffs are going to impact them, although they are financially. It was to talk about a random El Salvadorian migrant
Mm.
from Maryland who had nothing to do with them, but they were furious and terrified and outraged that this abdication of democratic rule was happening,
Yep.
even though it had nothing to do with them. I think that sent a message to Republicans who hopefully sent a message back to Donald Trump that, wait a second, you gotta cut the shit here.
And they know they're starting to feel this a little bit, which is great, because as what do we always say? No one's going to save us but us. And so
Yep.
I often say the righteous anger of the American people is what will ultimately change the situation. And so we're seeing that. But also, as when Donald Trump and his people start to feel more backed into a corner, he becomes even more more dictatorial, right? He knows he has levers of power, like invoking the Insurrection Act. We're just waiting for that.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's
Oh.
people who think it's going to be April 20th, which is in.
I mean, it could be
tomorrow.
then. It could be June 14th when he does this
Right.
freaking Gestapo military parade under the guise of patriotism, and the American people, I'm sure of it, will protest that day, as we
Yep.
should, because again, no kings, no fucking kings. Okay, like this is not what we do here. We don't
Nope.
do this in America. But there's the kind of like twofold here. But also what Republicans are starting to do, and what the White House is starting to do, because they realize they're losing the narrative on this whole Abrego Garcia thing, is they've changed the language to call him a terrorist, which this throwing around the term terrorist coming from official government sources is dangerous, because being labeled a terrorist has certain legal implications.
Yes.
The guy's not a terrorist, okay? And they don't get to just throw these terms around, because there are certain designations. If you're designated a terrorist, certain things don't apply. They use emergency powers. That's why they're using the Alien and Sedition Act stuff, because then if they claim that we're at war, then you can suspend habeas corpus and you don't have to go abide by due process, which is why the ruling overnight from the Supreme Court was so consequential.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you can't apply that. Sorry, guys, you have to try something else, because it has real world consequences for.
And that's why I'm wondering.
Right?
I'm wondering why they did it when they did it at at 1 o'clock in the morning. There's something.
We're gonna find out. It'll come out what's really going on. It's like what happened with Harvard, and we always seem to find out. But the Republicans now, and I want everyone to pay attention to this, do not fall for the bullshit about Abrego Garcia being an MS-13 terrorist gang member. This is a lie. It is propaganda bullshit. He is not an MS-13 gang member. They have not produced any evidence in a court of law. They are prosecuting this in the court of public opinion and on Fox News, because they know they don't have evidence that can hold up in a court of law. And as long as our courts of law are still valid and functioning, we need to make sure that is pointed out. Those people in Iowa that were yelling at Chuck Grassley, who is 250 years old, I think he was there when they signed the Declaration of Independence. He's like 95, okay? Chuck Grassley needs to retire. And he was like, he didn't know what to do, because these folks were yelling more about, it's not about Abrego Garcia anymore.
Yeah,
he
it's not.
represents due process in America. They thought, Trump and his people thought they could get away with demonizing gang members and illegal immigrants or whatever, because they figured the American people won't care about due process. Doesn't care if the Constitution isn't being followed. Doesn't matter if they're not following court orders, because these are horrible gang members that shouldn't be here to begin with. There are a lot of Americans who seem to be okay with that. But there are a lot more Americans who recognize that if it starts with them, they will come for us next. That is the principle here. We cannot, it doesn't matter. I don't care if he murdered people, and we still have due process in this country for a reason. The president and his minions his henchmen do not get to determine the law. That is the issue. Stay focused on that. And it's very clear that the reason why they keep they manufactured a photo. Did you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yes. With MS-13 on is, what if the case was so kosher? If it was kosher, if it was all good, if they had the evidence,
wouldn't have to do that.
They wouldn't be doing all this shit. And it's because they cannot. and this is an innocent guy. Well, I mean, maybe he had a couple of, who cares if he had a domestic incident with his wife?
I mean, like,
5
I
years
care,
ago?
but I don't care. Like, do you know what I
Right,
mean?
we
It doesn't
care,
make
but
you
it
any
doesn't-
less.
Right, it does
Right.
not matter.
He
There's a
was
due
prosecuted for it.
process. Due
was-
process even for that.
Yep. And let me
That's
tell
the
you
bottom
something.
line.
I was on I was on CNN a couple of nights ago with our friend Scott Jennings,
Lucky you.
and we got into it. And he, of course, was, you know, he's at the point now where I think he truly, desperately wants Carolyn Levitt's job. So he's going to say what, I mean, he knows better, but he's going to say whatever he's going to say.
He's never getting it, which is just the
No.
sad part about this.
Yeah,
Like,
he's never getting it because he's not blonde. and-
yourself-
Unless he's
you're
right. I
still
was
never
like,
gonna
unless
get
he's
it.
gonna grow some boobies and like dye his hair blonde. Like,
Right.
that's not gonna ever happen.
But
pay for them. Pay
Yeah.
for them.
Right.
but you know, I was like, how do you know? This guy's an MS-13 member. How do you know? How do you know? So I finally said, I got so angry. I said, how do you know?
Right.
And he said, because I had 2 presidents tell me that. Okay. The 2 presidents were Donald John Trump
And
and
Donald Trump.
Bukele. No, and Bukele
Bukele,
from
yeah,
El
yeah.
Salvador.
Who's a
Okay.
dictator?
Who's a dictator? So who's getting paid
Self-
$6 million?
Identified. He's the cool
Yeah.
dictator. Didn't he say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the next time, let's back up to 6 months ago. Joe Biden and the president of South Africa say that Elon Musk is an MS-13 member. And why don't we deport Elon Musk
Hmm.
to South Africa?
It'd be great. But yeah,
Right?
we can't.
Catherine, I don't legitimize Scott Jennings. He works for CNN. Trust me, not my decision. But the point is, could you just imagine Scott Jennings' reaction and the reaction of every MAGA person if somebody did this to Elon Musk? Oh, I'm sorry. Joe Biden said he's an MS-13 member, so why don't we ship him off to South Africa where he came
Or
from?
how about no. How about let's do this? Joe Biden and the president of South Africa determined that Elon Musk is a Nazi. He's
Which
part
is-
of the old
Yeah.
apartheid, you know.
Which
he's-
is more
which is
true
not
than this
only
guy is
true,
MS-13. Like,
right. You know what I mean? Like, and then they provide no evidence.
Right.
People would have, and that's the part about this. And like, that's why when Scott Jennings is on with people like you, Julie, people like me, people that will call him out for his
He's so
hypocrisy,
triggered.
he loses his shit.
He loses it.
Because
Mhm.
he knows, and that's when I was on last time with him. I think I've been banned for the show now because I spoke up about them platforming a misogynist, but whatever. When I said to him both, and I because I was part of the party, I know these people. I'm
Yeah.
like, you know damn well, Scott, and whatever other lackey was on that day, that if a Democrat had said what Donald Trump said at the Department of Justice, you guys would lose it. And
Right.
rightfully so, because it's not okay. So stop now. Now it's okay because it's the people you don't like, or because you are a complete, propagandist lackey, that it's okay. And we're all the assholes for pointing out your hypocrisy. These guys now are taking the narrative and turning it around and saying that the Democrats are pro gang member. They're pro terrorist.
That's what that's what they do.
I don't know if you guys saw, this was posted yesterday by this other jerk off, Mike Collins, this Republican.
Ugh.
Look what he did. I didn't give this to you. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a picture of Chris Van Hollen's Senate office, with it says Chris Van Hollen, El Salvador. They photoshopped out Maryland. And now Senator Chris Van Hollen, who's the senator who flew down to El Salvador to finally get the proof of life that Abrego Garcia is alive. And then, of course, they used it as a big propaganda tool, putting him in regular clothes, putting a hat on him so you don't see the shaved head, and then saying, oh, he's, they're having margaritas and everything's wonderful. And like, it was just really very sick the way they twisted it. But Chris Van Hollen, God bless him, went down there to make sure, I want to make sure this guy is alive, and let me see him and talk to him, and then brought that back. Now, what happens from this point forward, I don't know. This could be, I don't know. But the fact that they are doing this and now turning it around to say, oh, Democrats aren't for you, they're for the El Salvadorian gang members. Democrats, do not let them change this narrative. This is not even about Abrego Garcia. It's about our Constitution and our due process. Either you believe in that or not. Abrego Garcia is just a symbol. It doesn't matter what his status is. In America, this is what our Constitution provides. So, you know what? Democrats need to say, we're pro-Constitution.
Right.
That's what they need to do. Do not make this about Abrego Garcia being a migrant, being from this, Don't get caught up in that. Because most people aren't going to go those steps. You turn around and you counter this and say, we're pro-Constitution. Are you? Because this is against our Constitution.
And what pisses me off so much is that these are the same people. I sat next to them at Fox News for many years who have their little pocket constitutions. Eric
Yep.
Bolton
Oh,
was
yeah.
number 5 for
Posturing.
Yep.
Wave their little pocket constitutions.
I say it all the time.
Wear their little American flag lapel pins, right? The
Yep.
same people, the performative jingoism, just the performative bullshit jingoism. They fly the American flag like they own it.
Yes.
And
no, they don't. And they don't own it.
Don't, which is why I have one right outside my house. But
so do we.
Yep. But the part that pisses me off is that the same people that sat there and waved this Constitution in my face for years, as though they owned it and the rest of us didn't, are the ones who violate First Amendment. Gone, right? You say something bad about the President of the United States or about MAGA, or that's something that you don't like, Harvard, bye-bye. You don't get your federal funding anymore, right?
Yep.
Second Amendment, that's good because everybody's got guns, although I'll tell you something.
Until you see a group of Black people or Arabs or something sitting out with them.
And suddenly that'll be, probably litmus tested somehow. But then, just the right to due process, which is such a fundamental.
Yep.
It is the fundamental part of our Constitution. It is what we are about.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I would turn this around every time a MAGA says something about, they're for terrorists and they're blah, 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 I would turn around and say, no, we're for the Constitution. Are you against the 14th Amendment? Are you against the 4th Amendment? Are you against the 6th Amendment? Are you against the 8th Amendment? Because last time I checked, you people were the ones with the pocket constitutions. Maybe you need to take it out and read it.
Yeah.
This isn't about that. They need to turn it around on them and force them to make the constitutional argument that the position they're taking is consistent with the Constitution. Because guess what? It's not. And they know it.
Yeah. And you know who got due process more than anybody else? Donald John Trump.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That guy exploited every single judicial means at his disposal.
Yep.
To end up back at the White House.
Sorry, go ahead. No, keep going.
I've said it. That's
basically sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to just say, like, Tara, the thing that's pissing me off so much is that whataboutism that you brought up. The Democrats are pro gang, they're pro Emma because that's the only argument that they have. And it brings me back to something we talked about and we have talked about is like what they did to Democrats even after September 11th, right? Is like, what they did to Max Cleland after, like here is a Vietnam veteran who is like a triple amputee, who, he voted for the war in Iraq and then said that he regretted it. And his reelection campaign against Saxby Chambliss, that was run by Karl Rove. They basically went after him and said that he was like anti-American,
right? And
that he wasn't a patriot and he was a bad American, and threw all of that in his face with a couple of really scathing, horrible, unfair, ads to a man who has spent his life and gave his limbs for this country. And it destroyed the man. I mean,
they questioned his patriotism.
They questioned his patriotism.
Questioned it.
Right. They went to his strength. And these are people, again, this is the Republican playbook. They don't give a shit about anybody. They don't give a shit about the patriotism. They don't give a shit about service. They only use these things as weapons and tools when it is convenient for them to win an election. They don't give a shit about anything else. Not about women, not about Black people, not about civil rights, none of it.
And not about the Constitution at this point now. There used to be a line, right? Yes, there are hired gun mercenaries on both sides. This is part of the ugly consultant class part of politics, and we know this. Doesn't make it okay. I'm just saying, right. But there was still a line.
Right.
There was still a line. There's no line anymore. They wouldn't go into like, okay, this is like unconstitutional. We're going to destroy the fabric of our Constitution, because at least even they recognize the danger of doing that. If you start doing that, it's a slippery slope.
Right.
Now, that's way out the window. We're way past that threshold now, which is what makes us uncharted territory. We've never really
Mhm.
seen that
I'll tell
until
you,
the Civil War, I guess.
they
Was
better,
the
they
last
better be careful for two reasons. One is, unless they plan on staying in power in perpetuity, in which case just throw out the Constitution
Which I
now.
think is
Well,
the end goal.
But if that's the case, then just throw out the Constitution, because then we'll have no free and fair elections ever again. And we're in a dictatorship, and now we're living in Putin's Russia. Okay. But
that's
so,
what they should say, Julie. Again, Democrats should turn it around and go on offense with this shit with Abrego Garcia and
Yep.
say exactly that. Republicans, do you want to just throw the Constitution away? Because this is constitutional. His lack of due process is according to our Constitution. So
But-
do you want, we're abiding by the Constitution. You guys aren't. So which
Right.
is it?
So, but if they do still pretend to be pro-Constitution, in which case Donald Trump will be gone. And by the way, Donald Trump will be gone either because Mother Nature will eventually take him. He's not a young man.
Or a healthy man.
Or a healthy man for that matter. Or he'll be gone.
224 pounds.
Right. Yeah, right. Right. 6'2", right? 224 pounds.
6'3", I think. 6'3".
Yeah, 6'3", sorry.
Yeah.
The physique of like NFL elite
Right.
athletes.
Of a running back. Good job.
Did you see that photograph, by the way, of him next to, I forgot which NFL player
Yeah.
it was?
Yes.
Like basically a 12-pack practically.
Yes, who's
Yeah.
like shredded with 2% body
And like
fat.
him next to like, what was like Chris Hemsworth or something. And it was like,
Yes,
the
next to
same.
Thor.
I'm like, what? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, we
224
believe you,
pounds
buddy.
on Mars, maybe. Like, or on
But
the
anyway,
moon.
so but if they still think that one day we might have free and fair elections, they better be careful.
Yeah.
Because if they go down this road and they get the Supreme Court to side with them, which
Mhm.
this court, who the hell knows, then the next, I will tell you, because I come from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party.
Sorry, Tony. One of the comedians says he has a front butt. Because that's the reverse of a poopa, right?
Right. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good.
Oh my god, I needed that laugh. Sorry, Julie. Go ahead.
Wow. Well, anyway, when the front butt eventually kills him, the problem is going to be for these guys that like the Democratic, there's not going to be another Joe Biden who's going to just want to move on. And he talked about the former guy. We're going to have a truth and reconciliation.
Yeah.
To the sweet baby Jesus. If we
I
don't,
hope so.
I'm not voting for another Democrat again unless they commit to doing that. I want to
Listen,
count.
my husband keeps saying this every time like they do this crazy shit. He's like, man, when they're out of power, what's going to come back on them? I'm like, that one would
This
hope.
is the thing. I mean, when you hold people like Donald Trump accountable, people who can never self-reflect, that they will always double, triple down, and they will just go forward with the worst instincts and impulses that they have, retribution, revenge, right? If you're going to hold these people accountable, you need to go all the way. And that's where the Biden administration, the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, they all messed up. And the Senate, I mean, Mitch McConnell, like if you're going to hold these people accountable, you got to do it. You can't just go halfway with these people, because what you get is Hitler coming back from prison.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that they wanted to pretend that this was an aberration. This isn't America.
Right.
This guy was a 4-year aberration. Guess what, my friends? He's not an aberration.
No.
He's a symptom.
And by the way, we are who we are. We're not exceptional because we are running face first into a dictatorship. So why don't we own it and stop pretending that we are somehow exceptional and he was an aberration. He wasn't an aberration because he's back. And anybody who wants to treat him like an aberration or think this is just Trump and nobody's going to emulate Trump again, the next guy is going to be Trump, but smarter.
JD Vance thinks he's going to fill that role. And I have this conversation a lot. The Europeans are obsessed with JD Vance because of what he said at the Munich Security Conference. And like they recognize that JD Vance is, there's a lot of
he's a slick Willie, I'll tell you that.
He's not dumb, right? He's a very smart guy, and he does have a certain ideology that has been instilled in him, or that he's decided to latch onto with the whole Peter Thiel tech bro feudalism thing. Like it's scary.
It's the Curtis Yarvin.
Correct. And so they're looking at this and they're like, is JD Vance the heir apparent? And I'm like, well, JD Vance would like to be. I said, and his billionaire backers would like him to be, but he doesn't have the charisma.
No.
And he doesn't connect with people the
He's
way
like-
that Donald Trump does, however you like it or not. Donald
Right.
Trump is good at that and has
Yeah.
convinced people into thinking he's their champion when we all know he isn't. JD Vance doesn't have that.
Because he
there are
doesn't
people-
present as an elitist, even though
Right.
he is. He's an
Correct.
elitist in like a money, like kind of way, like in a gold, you know, fake gold plated
Yes.
shit. JD
Yeah.
Vance went to Ivy League school. JD Vance talks
Mhm.
like somebody who did.
Right.
Same with Ron DeSantis. I mean, here's the
Yep.
other thing. People thought that Ron DeSantis was going to be the heir apparent. Like here are two guys with the charisma of belly button lint.
Yeah.
Okay. Like they are the most weird, awkward, like
Yeah.
like
They're like trying, they're like,
creepy.
it's like it's fed into the program and they're like, they spew
Yeah,
it
they're like,
out. And it's like, dude, this is not it.
right. They're like the
I said
Manchurian
he has the
candidates.
charisma of a toll booth taker. You truly can appreciate that being from Jersey.
I know, but I have friends who are toll booth takers, so I would never, ever, ever say they're not charismatic. But I will also say that Ron DeSantis is a weirdo. I mean, like That's
like
not-
American Psycho level, like the
weirdo.
two of them, they have the crazy darkness in their eyes. There's something not right. And I again, I'll say this, my friends went to the Darlington School where he was a teacher, and I know about the year that he was there, and I know about those pictures that were shown and the young women who were blurred out. I know. Listen, I don't know how bad it was, but like, it's not great. And he's certainly, again, Ron DeSantis is one of those people who he is not forthcoming in who he was. I mean, remember when they interviewed him about September 11th, like, where were you? And he was like, well, I was just a young guy. And I was like, I know where you were. You were in a classroom at a private school in Georgia. You were teaching school and you were on the East Coast. It was 8:45 in the morning. And like, at my last place of employment, we made an ad about this. And our sources told us that Casey DeSantis went through the roof when she saw it, because we ran it on TV in Tallahassee and in Georgia.
I am so sick of these spouses.
Ugh.
The Casey DeSantises of the world, like
the Serena Joy Waterford.
Yeah,
because she's the brains and she's the better looking person. She's the more charisma. Unfortunately, she should have been the one running in the first place. But again, these are the kind of people who get married at.
Yeah, but anyway, but the point is, like, watch out. By the way, the heir apparent's going to be. Ironically, this is going to be the most like Shakespearean aspect of this. Eventually, it's going to be who's the littlest Trump? Barron.
Oh, Barron.
He's the favorite child now.
Littlest, but like
Lurch.
Lurch. But yeah, like that's because Junior has no respect from his dad.
No, none.
Ivanka's too busy cashing in with the Saudi money.
Mm-hmm.
Eric's a moron.
Eric's not smart.
And
Tiffany, he doesn't acknowledge. And
but Barron, though, he's a very weird kid.
So is his dad.
But not in the same way. Like Barron's very.
I know people who went to Columbia Grammar, whose kids went to
Columbia Grammar. So do I. I was babysitting kids that were there at the same time.
And yeah, little Barron had little problems back then.
Correct.
Didn't somebody over the summer like start posting the things about how he would like?
Yes, there was like an extra which extracurricular what's the word? Like, it's like kids who go to the park after school and like play games and stuff. And it was somebody who like worked for like a group or something who did that. And he would come with other kids and play kickball and stuff like that. But he was a little bit, I mean, according to this person, I'm not saying this, I wasn't there, was like a little more violent. He was like very verbally abusive, and he was, just things just not quite great about him. And so,
Donald Trump's son is a behavioral. Donald Trump and Melania's spawn is a behavioral problem.
And it's not just him, because unfortunately for people who don't have children in New York City, consider yourself blessed that you don't have to go through the hell of trying to get your kids into private schools, but
Ugh.
but
And
when
they're
you
so expensive.
oh,
I know.
they're
It's
so
like
expensive.
Columbia Prep is like, oh my God. It's like
Yeah,
college.
but when you do, you have to. It's basically getting your kids into night. Like it's truly the only reason I'm not joking. My son is
Yeah.
an only child because I said after I got him into one of these schools, I cannot go through this process again. Like never ever. That's when I was like, I will never have another child because I just don't have it in me to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so funny.
It's like getting a condo in New York to go through the condo
it's like,
board.
Right.
Going through a co-op board, but worse.
It's
Co-op,
funny
that's what I
that
meant. Co-op.
But anyway, so the point is when I was interviewing at all of these, because you have to interview, then your kid has to interview. P.S. They're 4 years old when they're interviewing.
Yeah.
This is for kindergarten. But when I was interviewing at one of these schools, one of them, which will remain nameless because I also, whatever.
Yeah.
The older Trump boys had gone there.
Mm.
And the woman interviewing me had recognized me from I was a Fox back then, and so she knew I was a Democrat. So we started spilling tea because it was 2016. It was right in the midst of, and she said to me that I forgot which one, either Junior or Eric had gone to the school. And then this is a woman who worked at the school, and she said, and we can't discuss why, but one day they were just gone. And it wasn't because their parents wanted them gone. And I was like, really? Because it is really hard to get kicked out of these schools. Like,
I'm not surprised.
And I was like, really? And I kind of didn't want to, I was I was the supplicant. So I wasn't going to be like, really, tell me more.
Right.
My own stuff there, but it was very fascinating because she was like, oh yes, I'm not really supposed to say this, but I'll tell you. And I was like, okay.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Like each of these kids.
Yeah. And also, I mean, there was a number of years they didn't speak to him because of what he had done to their mother, like humiliating her and cheating on her with what's her name? Marla
Maples.
Marla Maples with Tiffany, which then again, during an interview talked about how his little baby daughter was going to have big boobs. I mean, just sick people, sick.
I know.
But I'll tell you this. When I first met Donald Trump Jr., I'll tell you exactly when it was. It was 2007. It was in the green room of Fox Business. He was lovely. He was polite. He was upstanding. And I remember walking out of there and thinking, this is Donald Trump's kid. Like, how
does he raise them?
He didn't raise them.
He didn't raise them.
I kept thinking
Ivana did.
Ivana did a really good job because this is a really polite young guy, like young man. He's not that much younger than me, but like maybe.
Yeah, but you know where the flip came? He had to become a monster like his father so daddy would love him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. That's what's so fascinating between 2007. And he said to there's some other guy who was like giving him a really hard time. He's like, your dad and the gold plated toilets. This is in the green room. And Junior said something like, I just want my dad to focus on The Apprentice and on TV so I could focus on the business. I just want to focus on real estate. So this is a guy who actually didn't want to be a celebrity, didn't want to do anything. He wanted to
Kendall.
build.
Poor Kendall.
Right? Yes, Kendall Roy.
It was Kendall Roy. And what's so funny, exactly, he was Kendall Roy, but a much better behaved Kendall Roy.
Yeah.
Somewhere between that experience in 2007 and today, or not today, 10 years ago, something happened.
Yeah. A decision was made to go down a very dark path.
Yeah.
And so many.
And WJ, I don't think he was doing bumps in the bathroom then. I'll just tell you. I think he was actually a really nice, upstanding guy.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, but I
can't say that now. I mean, good God. I mean, he's, I don't know, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
well, and you know the story about when he was at UPenn, and I've talked about it on this show or the other show, I don't remember. And again, I just read this, and it was a friend of mine. It was like I had friends in common with this person on Facebook of like people who grew up in like Beverly Hills and stuff like that. So like, I figured this was like at least partially true. Was the day that Donald Trump had shown up at Don Jr.'s dorm. It was like a Saturday morning or something, and he was hungover. And Donald Trump walked in, and like the door opened. Of course, like everybody, in a dorm, you're like looking down the hall, like who's here? And he slapped Don Jr. in the face in front of everybody on his floor. He fell to the ground, and he said, "Get your ass up, put on a suit or something." And like they were going to go to a baseball game. And like, that's what he did to his kid in front of everybody that he lived with. humiliated him. And so like this guy who was like who wrote this, and again was a mutual, or like I don't know him. It was just I had read it and had the friends in common. Had said, he's like, listen, he's like, I don't really know the guy. I have nothing against him. He's like, I just remember that happening and how jarring and memorable that was and how humiliating it was for him. And this, I think, was during like the 2016 election. That
No.
post went viral. No, I'm saying like the post went viral.
Yeah. Well, and then somebody's talking about Kimberly. I don't know if anybody saw Kimberly, I think, posted. I don't follow her on social
She's
media.
a hot mess. Oh, what a mess.
Oh, you guys.
What a mess.
I have stories. I sat next to her for many years on the 5.
I don't know how you did it. I just want to say, like, everyone send virtual hugs and vibes to Julie, because for a decade, I don't know how you did it. And you really have like the thickest skin and like nerves of steel, because I would be so triggered like daily by these people.
Loved it. I loved it because the one thing that Fox allowed me to do is just hit back at them all. Like it was just like to their face. Kimberly actually tried to get me thrown off the 5 because I once said to her on air that because she was saying how Iran and Iraq were going to team up at something. And I was like, yeah, one is Sunni, one is Shia, Kimberly. They hate each other.
Right.
And she went nuts. You think I don't know about Sunni Shia? And I was like, actually, I don't think. And she went crazy. And literally, it turned out then tried to get me thrown off the show. And so, you know, anyway, but she posted something like this article from somewhere, which she probably made up, saying Greece is getting Kimberly fever. The Greeks can't wait till Kimberly gets there. I'm like, you think the Greeks are sitting there waiting for Kimberly Guilfoyle to find her next like Arionassas to marry?
Right.
Because that's why she's there. P.S. Kimberly Guilfoyle is going there to find the Greek ship like Stavros Niarchos the 5th to like go marry. The problem for Kimberly, as I've always said, is Kimberly's a little long in the tooth these days. Like you can't use that,
yeah.
60 these days. And so you can't, you marry, how could she be married to Gavin? Oh, because Gavin, her dad was very influential in San Francisco politics.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that's how she and Gavin got together. And
yep. And she didn't look like Elvira back then. Okay. Like
poor Elvira, who's such
actually a very pretty girl and smart and like a good prosecutor. Like she wasn't this caricature of Elvira on 42nd and 8th from the 1970s. Like it wasn't. And anybody who knows New York City and what was on 42nd and 8th knows that reference. Yeah. So like she wasn't like that. And she's another one. I mean, Kimberly used to be lovely to me. She tried to get me to come to Fox, actually, Julie, back in the day. And I did an event with her, but right before the election in 2015 or 16. I mean, she was still kind of like becoming all of this then, but she like. And then she was another one that just fucking lost her shit.
Yeah.
I would say that Kimberly always had lost another one who's very
since she went to Fox. I mean, back when she was like a prosecutor married to Gavin, like those days, she was.
You know who's lovely, by the way, since we're just spilling tea on everybody.
Why not?
The person who's lovely is Gavin's current wife, his second wife.
Oh, yeah. She's an actress. She was on Mad Men.
Jen Siebel Newsom. So I know her slightly. She is like the best part of the Newsom family is Jen Siebel Newsom. She's amazing.
Well, she needs to tell her husband to stop doing stupid shit.
Yeah, he's another slick Willie.
To her credit, she's got her own thing going. Like she's got this production company that she's doing like documentaries.
Good for her.
Good for her.
She's got her own thing going on, and she is a wonderful, kind. I mean, to the limited amount of interaction I had with her, but wonderful, kind, and great.
And the episode of Mad Men, if anybody wants to know what episode of Mad Men she's on, it's when Betty and Don run into one of Betty's old modeling friends. And it's very clear that she is like an escort for rich guys now. Like that's her. It's just the one episode. And I say that because I'm like a diehard Mad Men fan, which is why I have my Sterling Cooper Draper Price mug today. So nice. I digress. Anyways, keep going, Julie.
Well, actually, that is a good segue into how we can kind of wrap the show today because
Yeah.
I'm finally caught up on Handmaid's Tale. Elizabeth Moss was in Mad Men, and now she's in Handmaid's.
Don't say anything.
I'm not going to say anything to ruin it for those who haven't seen
But
it. But
we should do a
we should. We're talking about doing like the way they do it for The Last of Us, and they do for like Succession. They have like the podcast analysis after. So I think Michelle and I are going to start doing either Substack lives or some kind of lives where we talk about Handmaid's Tale episodes after they happen. Because this season,
I'll join that.
Woo, wow.
Yeah. I would love to try to get Cherry Jones on to talk to us.
Has anybody watched the new, speaking of Sterling Cooper, Draper Price, has anybody watched the new John Hamm show?
I haven't.
Neighbors, something like that. It's
Apple, Olivia
right?
Munn's in it too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I haven't.
If anybody in the chats watched it, let me know because I want to see.
I haven't either. And
I
actually,
John Hamm.
Full disclosure, I did not watch Mad Men. And I know.
Tara.
I know.
Just spend the rest of your day.
Tara has not watched one of the two best television shows ever. One of them is Mad Men, and the other is The Americans.
I know.
Can I tell you something?
I've already like almost caught myself up on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel because
you see my episode yet?
The wonderful Alex Borstein is on our Seneca Project Advisory Board, and she won Emmys for that role as Susie in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So, and then also we had the amazing Tony Shalhoub was a supporter of Seneca. He did a fundraiser for us, and so I was like, okay, I got to catch up on this. And what a delight! I'm so glad. Amazing.
Are you to my little cameo yet? Are you
not
to that
yet?
Episode?
Michelle had a cameo.
Well, it's not a I did background for a day, but like I got
which season was that?
Season 3, I think. It's okay. So I'll tell you, if anybody's a Maisel fan, I quit acting a very long time ago, but I had an opportunity to do background work on like the season finale. It's when Tony Shalhoub's character is like yelling at somebody on the street and they throw a tomato at him. I am right behind him. I get hit. There was only like a few people in the scene. And I get hit with the tomato, and it was actually like one of my favorite days. Like on set, we were wearing these, polyester, because everything all the costume department, like everything down to like the undergarments was 1960. And so like a little uncomfortable, but it was so hot out. But everything is meticulous anyways. Amy Sherman Palladino, who's also a supporter of Seneca Project. We love her. She directed this episode. And so it was outside at a theater on like 44th Street. And it was just like the best day. Anyway, so you can see me very clearly with Tony Shalhoub. And I actually showed it to him when he came on our fundraiser. And he was like, no way. And I'm
like, no way. He's the nicest guy, by the way.
Yeah.
The nicest guy. He's amazing. He's amazing.
But I've never seen that show. I've tried. I know. I'm going to be so
and you're an Upper West Sider. Come on.
Yeah, Julie, especially you as a Jewish American in the Upper West Side, you couldn't get into it.
I know, and the deli they go to is Artie's. Remember, they closed Artie's on like the corner of what was like 81st and right. So the Amazon used Artie's for like several years after it closed for all the show.
You couldn't get into it, Julie. It's so well done.
I think I only watched like the first or second episode, and then
no, you gotta give it another shot.
I will. The other show, I'm embarrassed to say, because also I'm Russian. I'm embarrassed to say I never finished watching The Americans.
Stop
I know.
it. I don't know what to do with either of you.
I
literally I just bought a book about I forget the author, but I've been waiting for this book to come out. It's called The Illegals, and it's about the illegals program that the Soviet Union had, which is what the Americans is. Oh, it's so good. I love Matthew Rhys. I love Matthew Rhys.
What's her name is in it from The Diplomat?
Carrie Russell.
Carrie Russell. Yeah.
That's where they met, and they have kids together now.
Yeah, I know. There's not enough hours in the day. There's so many good shows
but
on.
like, especially now, I mean, because they say there's more Russian spies living in the United States now than there were in the 80s, which is crazy because that was like the height of the illegals program. But Matthew Rhys is so good, and Carrie Russell, both of them are so good. Matthew Rhys, I am such a huge Huge fan. He's Welsh and his American accent is amazing. On my 40th birthday, I rented his little Ernest Hemingway boat and rode it around
Oh,
the
that's
Hudson.
right. I remember this. That was him.
What's the Ernest Hemingway boat?
He had like an old like wooden boat, and it was like, I don't know, it's like some, I don't know. I'll send it to you.
Like,
He did
like
a thing.
the old like yachts that they use.
Like the tiny,
when you go like out of Chelsea, you go on like the Sunset Cruises. They're beautiful, like teak wood.
But
and
he
they have,
restored
like,
it himself during COVID. He like bought it and restored it, and then he hired like a ship captain person, and it's like, you know, it's a boat for like 6 people or something, and you know, you could pay, and I mean, it was like you know, it was a couple bucks, but it was my 40th birthday and I paid, and I brought like my best friends, and we went out and rode it around the Statue of Liberty at sunset on my birthday for my 40th birthday. It was awesome. Matthew Reese, thank you so much. But he has since retired. He has since retired the boat, which is too bad. It was a beautiful, beautiful like 1920s like wooden boat. It was just is gorgeous. But I do want to address this. People are saying Elizabeth Moss is a cult member, currently a Scientologist. I know.
We know. So is Tom Cruise, but we still watch his movies.
I don't.
I know.
I do not. I refuse to watch Tom Cruise
the only
movies.
thing, listen, the only thing I'll give Elizabeth Moss is she doesn't talk about it. She was born into it. Her parents are Scientologists, and I have a couple friends in college, brothers, whose parents were Scientologists, and like they were so sheltered from the religion that they didn't even like realize how crazy it was until that Going Clear documentary came out. But anyways, Elizabeth Moss is Scientologist. I know. I hate it. I wish she wasn't.
Right.
But at least she's making this show about something that matters, and I'll give her that.
And it really matters, and it's tough for some people, but I'm sorry, The Handmaid's Tale is a fucking warning. Okay.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece, really.
It is really everything that happens in this show is plausible. And how America becomes Gilead, it's a warning, people. It really, really is, because one day they woke up and they lost their rights. Women couldn't work. The Gestapo, like what we're seeing now with ICE coming in and removing women like from their jobs. Like, it's, guys, the religious theocracy behind Handmaid's Tale and and the violence behind it and the rationalization for why they do it and what happens to women and the people who stood by and accepted it and woke up one day into a violent religious theocracy, and then the rebellion, the May Day rebellion. Telling you guys, it's relevant. It's relevant. It's tough, but relevant.
Well,
she was an advisor, I believe. Margaret Atwood has continued to be.
The book doesn't address what's happening,
but she has been a part of the advising of the storylines and things like that.
Yeah,
and I highly recommend, if you haven't watched it. Like, here's the thing: I get complaints from people. Oh, it's been so upsetting, I can't watch it. Well, what are you going to do?
Life is upsetting.
Right. And nothing that Margaret Atwood wrote about was untrue. She wrote about a scenario about something. Hi, Rafi.
It's cat butt. She's like, it's coffee conversation and cat butt. It happens.
I wish Oliver Sterling would come up here. It's just,
right.
But I know we need to go, but I do want to just ask you really quick, because this is and there's so much news going on, and we'll get to more on Wednesday. Come back and see us at noon Eastern on Wednesday, same channels. But I would love to know what both of you think about David Hogg, who is now the vice chair of the DNC, taking the $20 million to, I mean, you guys, by the way, are making my day. Thank you for all these wonderful comments. Kat Dennings, love her. Anyways, so David Hogg is going to take $20 million and invest it in primarying Democrats who are not fighting hard enough against Donald Trump. I want to know what both of you think, because James Carville is freaking out and went on TV like uproarious, and David Hogg like gave it back to him and was like, you haven't won an election since the 90s. What do you guys think?
I mean, I have thoughts, but I want to hear Julie's first as the resident Democrat strategist here.
I will say this. I have spent and I've said this before, but for people who don't know, I have spent my entire career in the deepest establishment of the Democratic Party. Like, I never worked for insurgents. I was always the establishment person. I
Mhm.
a lot of money working at one point, no
Mhm.
longer, but working for establishment candidates. And I will tell you that I am at the point of my life now. And by the way, ideologically, I'm much more of where like a Chuck Schumer is than an AOC is.
Mhm.
There were a primary in New York State where I live, and Chuck Schumer ran against AOC for Senate. I would vote for AOC.
Mhm.
Andrew Cuomo, who's running for mayor of New York, who is problematic on many levels to me, not the least of which is I run a nonprofit that makes sure that women can speak their truth if they're harassed or assaulted. And of course, he had his own background with that.
Mhm.
But Andrew Cuomo is a technocrat. And I think, personality aside, I think he would have been a good mayor for New York. However, yesterday, Cuomo went nuts on AOC and basically trashed her and maligned her. I'm not really clear on why, because
He's just triggered by women who have an opinion, and he's using tax dollars to like look at women's gynecological records.
Yeah, and I basically said to myself, I was like, you know what? If I weren't voting against Andrew Cuomo before, I'm not in Jerry Janarone. I see that you're in the chat. You know what I'm talking about because Jerry Janarone is from New Jersey. She knows how establishment I've been. But I will
Great
tell
picture
you,
with Joe Biden, Jerry, too. Love it.
Yeah. Yes. He probably took that selfie because he's notorious for doing it.
Yeah,
he did that with me and my stepkids at an event, so he likes to do that. Anyway, go ahead, Julie.
But what I would say to you is like no, fuck you, Andrew Cuomo. Like, sorry, Dad. But yeah, like you're not getting my vote. Neither is Eric Adams. Neither is that crazy left-wing loon who's running, whose name I can't remember.
The socialist guy. Ugh.
I don't even know who the hell to vote for. I cannot believe in a city of 8 or 9 million people, this is the best we can do.
I know. But it's like Brad Lander, who's a good guy, and it's like, but I don't know what any of them are doing. Anyway,
but my point is like,
so it sounds to me like Julie is is leaning toward David Hogg.
I'm leaning towards David Hogg. I'm not sitting there saying I'm going to spend money, like we should spend money getting rid of these people. I'm just saying that if you, and I've said this to young women, I just did this talk at something called Ready to Run for women a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
and I basically said to them, I'm like, do not wait. And this goes to men too. It's not just a women thing. Do not wait your turn. Just run. Just run. Because if you don't think your representative or your senator or your mayor or your councilman or your dog catcher is doing what you want them to do, just run. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to lose. Oh, well, then you won't be elected. You're elected now anyway. So the point is like, you know, it's not a matter of threats. It's not a matter I'm going to spend $20 million against you. It's a matter of if you don't get your shit together and start standing up for democracy and start standing up for where this country is and not making clear what Tara said so well a couple of minutes ago, which is that we're pro-Constitution and they're not, then get the hell out of here. And I would say that to Chuck Schumer, and I have voted for Chuck Schumer. I mean, like I go back with Chuck Schumer to when he was.
Oh, hi, Marcus.
Hey, Marcus.
Thanks for being here. Hi.
Yes.
We love Marcus.
Yeah. So Marcus is a great example.
Great example.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marcus didn't win, but guess what, Marcus? I'm sure you could probably chime in the chat. What's the worst thing that happened to you? You lost. Oh, well.
And he ran again and he lost.
And look what he's been able to accomplish since then. He put his name on the map. He's raised a shit ton of money for other candidates and for other
get them elected.
Yeah.
Yep. And he's been a huge supporter of Seneca. And we've produced 2 great ads with Hold the Line and Marcus. And we can show the ad before we go. Speaking of what to do for Democrats as far as messaging. Julie, finish your point, and then we'll close out the show on that.
No, but I want to hear from you too, Tara. So my point is, you don't have to threaten anybody. Just do it. Just go ahead and do it. And you don't need to get into a shit show fight with James Carville, by the way, and get insulting to James Carville. Because by the way, James Carville, 80% of what he says, I actually agree with.
I do too.
But he's been wrong, very wrong about a couple things, but like 80% of the time, his instinct is correct on these things. He's an old goat, but he's a wise one, and you should watch his documentary about him. He's actually like, I appreciate James Carville for a lot of things, and so I'll tell you quickly what I think about the David Hogg thing, and then we'll show our new Seneca Project ad, because why not? And but it's so look. what the principle of what David Hogg is doing, which is basically like, if you're not going to fight, you don't get to sit in a safe seat and do nothing. The moment requires you do something. So we're going to push you, because if you think, because he was clear about the safe seat Democrats, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, you don't get to sit there on your ass in your safe seat and not fight and think you're not going to be challenged. Right. I'm okay with that, because you know what? Republicans do that all the time. Yeah, Republicans will say, if you don't do what's good for the rest of us, we will primary you. Now they
Eric
because they want you to be more. That's right. They want you to be more pro-Trump,
crazy,
pro-crazy. But the principle of you need to be challenged if you're not doing your job, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So, but where I'm not okay with it is that David Hogg has turned this into more of a kind of we have to be careful that it doesn't become about him, and it doesn't distract away from what the Democrats should be doing overall, because now it's become a catfight between Carville and Hogg, and now it's all the Democrats are in disarray. They can't get their shit together, and it becomes a distraction.
Yeah.
But the underlying challenge, what David Hogg is talking about, that you like, listen, you need to be challenged to do the right thing and be a fighter. And if not, you're going to get challenged.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. But the way it's being executed, that's where it becomes a little bit of a problem. So,
it's like the sentiment and like the idea behind it is correct. And Marcus said something about like democracy requires competition, and it does.
Yes.
And I think that Congresswoman Balint, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago, is a perfect example of that. She's a congresswoman from Vermont, and she was on our show. If you want to go back and watch it. She says, and I'm paraphrasing, is that you need to be willing to lose your seat.
Yep.
You need to be willing to lose your seat. You need to be willing to do the right thing.
Yep.
Because she's like, I have other things to do. I have other things in my life. This isn't the only thing in my life that I want to do or am going to do or have done. And my thing is, I remember Kirsten Gillibrand said this many years ago. And it's funny because of the turn that she's taken, in my opinion. She said, if we're not here to help people, what the F are we doing here?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
And I have never understood why more people are not in public service for that reason. I think there's obviously a lot of money and ego and power, swept up in that. But, the thing is with the Gen Z kids, and I have a lot of respect for them and how much they care about things. And I have no doubt in my mind that they care. They care. They have experienced, tomorrow is the anniversary of Columbine. We had Florida State shooting just a couple days ago, which a friend of mine is a professor there and was, sheltering in place. Like, these things are real. And
Oklahoma City is today. I mean,
Oklahoma City, 30th anniversary today. Yes. And so, I have so much respect and love for these kids. Right. But you don't know what you don't know. And like, some of them just don't want to know. They think that they know all the things that they don't know.
They do, and they don't, right? That's what because it's a lot of feeling, and it's all about that. It's very emo, which me as a Gen Xer,
yes,
Julie
Gen Z need to accept mentorships. Yes, Mary, exactly.
Yes, exactly. And like the Gen Xers, like us, like we're, I saw some people commenting on my Goonie shirt today, which guy. We're just built a little differently. And I don't know how a lot of the Gen Xer parents that are raising these Gen Zers have messed this up in a way.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're just built differently. And they, yes, to all the things that you said. So,
yeah.
But I think I'll say this real quickly. Sorry, I know we have to go.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say is I'm not suggesting that they wait in line the way we did in Gen X. I think Gen X waited so long in line that we'll never have a Gen X president. Ever.
Right, at this rate, no.
Because the baby boomers stuck around way too long, and now we're kind of aging out, and the millennials, Michelle's generation, are going to be.
It's Michelle's generation.
So my point is, I'm not suggesting that these Gen Zers wait in line. I appreciate that David Hogg is 20, however old he is.
25.
And good for him. He's at the top of the DNC. They put him in there for whatever, he ran, he won, God bless.
Yeah.
Only thing I would say is, yes, James Carville has not won an election since the 90s because James Carville has not run campaigns since the 90s.
Right.
But it's not that James Carville went to the old person's home in the 90s and stopped doing what he's doing. And the reality is we can go ahead and respect James Carville, as I do. I am deep agree with him where he said Democrats should play dead. The complete opposite, in my opinion, is true.
I
But
agree.
I'm not disrespect him for saying it. I'm just saying that we disagree. And that's what David Hogg could have said to James Carville. And if David Hogg wants to take $20 million and spend it primarying people, what I would say is that David Hogg should spend $20 million recruiting people.
That's what I'm saying about the execution of it.
Right? And so Marcus Flowers is a great example. Marcus, still here, ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene in a seat that is really hard to win. But in my opinion, we need to contest all 435 seats.
50 states strategy always.
Strategy, 435 seat strategy, 100 seat strategy in the Senate. And the reality is that Marcus raised a ton of money because people hate Marjorie Taylor Greene and they were inspired by Marcus's story. Was that money going to make Marcus win in a really red district? It was going to be tough. But what it did was it made Marjorie Taylor Greene not be able to export her money to other seats.
Yep.
That's right.
Make her spend money on her own race.
Her own race. Because
that's right. That's the
Marcus raised, I forgot what it was. What,
17 million.
Something like that. Some crazy amount.
Yes. $17 million in a congressional race in a ruby red district in Georgia.
Right.
And so, exactly right. And so my point is there is a method to all of this, and it's not fighting, and it's not like I'm going to screw you if you don't do what I want. It's a question of if you want to run against, I don't know, name it, Chuck Schumer, because you don't think he's doing what he needs to do, then do it.
That's right.
Then do it.
You force them to have to justify their position, right? If anything, and then it exposes them. If you listen, nobody's entitled to their office. They have to earn it. Right? It's like
that seat doesn't belong to you.
Anyone. That's right.
It belongs to the American people.
That's correct. What do I say all the time, Michelle? We need to remind these people that they work for us.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, remind these people they work for us at every level where there's elections like that. People forget this. They're not entitled to that seat. I don't give a damn how long they've been there. They need to learn, or they have to earn it. Earn your vote. And so that goes to, and as we wrap the show today, it goes back to what I was saying before. The Democrats need to stay on offense, force these people, these Republicans, to justify their positions, and don't be afraid to turn it around on them.
Yep.
I used the example of Abrego Garcia earlier about this is about the Constitution. It's not about him. It's about the Constitution. Either you believe in it or you don't. Do not let them co-opt that narrative. Same thing with the economy and what's happening with tariffs and what Donald Trump is deliberately doing and tanking our economy and inflicting all this pain on everyone, including the MAGAs. Yeah. And they're starting to see these business owners, like now polling is showing that only 2% regret their vote. But guess what? If those 2% voted the other way, we wouldn't have Donald Trump. So, votes matter.
Right.
It's small numbers that need to be moved. It's not a mandate. But the same thing with the tariff and the economic messaging. Democrats, don't be afraid to turn this around. Don't let Donald Trump and Republicans gaslight and bullshit the American people into what's happening is somehow good for us. It's not. So what did we do? And in partnership with Marcus Flowers and his PAC, Hold the Line, we produced this new ad, and we took the idea of that god-awful attack ad that Donald Trump used, but very effectively during the campaign, that Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. So you know what? Donald Trump ain't for you, okay? He's for them. And the them isn't you. The them is the billionaires and his cronies. Yep. So here's our ad as we wrap up the show today that we, again, thank you, Marcus, for hanging out with us this morning, but it gave us an opportunity to show what we're doing here at Seneca. Yeah. We turn this around and we hope that more Democrats take our lead and use this as a foundation for attack ads right now. You don't wait until the election because there's no such thing as an off year. Set the narrative now. Donald Trump is to blame for the economic pain that he's inflicting on everyone, and tanking the global economy and all of that to benefit them, not you. He did this to you. So thank you guys for hanging out with us.
Are we coming back after this or no? We're just going to show it and then go. Okay,
no, we're gonna close out on this. And those who are going out to protest today, God bless. Be safe, and post pictures.
Yes, and I just want to say just one thing really quick. That's why I asked if we were coming back. Yeah. Is that all of these dictators and authoritarians have been able to take over in times that people allowed it to happen. I would say because there was an economic condition happening in these countries where people were prospering. Like the economy was good. People were making money. This is one of the mistakes, in my opinion, that Donald Trump is making, is that he is messing with people's money. People are not going to overlook that for some ideological craziness.
Nope.
People will allow ideological craziness because they're making money. So I think that that's something that we should pay attention to while they're stealing our data and going to threaten to shut off our financial lives and security if we dissent and other things like that. We can talk about that another time. But this is one of the biggest mistakes that he's making in his authoritarian takeover, is that he is destroying the economy, and the American people are not going to forgive that. So,
that is
anyways,
100%.
Everybody who joined us today, see us again on Over It on Wednesday. Somebody asked about Bill Maher. Oh, believe me, I'll have a lot to say about that on Wednesday.
We did with last night's show. I didn't watch. I don't know anything about it.
I mean,
no. Him hanging out with Donald Trump.
We hadn't talked about that, but that's not going to go away because it's part of
if you're not sick of us yet, I'm going to be on MSNBC tonight on Eamon Show from 8 for like basically the whole hour at 8 o'clock tonight.
Great.
Tara and Michelle, do you guys have anything coming up between now and Wednesday?
Well, I was supposed to do MSNBC last night, but I got bumped because of the Supreme Court news, which is fine. And people are like, "What?" I'm like, "No, this happens all the time. It's okay.
Often.
It's the nature of cable news." Tonight, while Julie is on Eamon, I will be coloring Easter eggs with my husband and my mom.
Can you afford them?
We what?
Can you afford them?
I know, right? I had to we're only gonna do eggs this time instead of a whole dozen because they're too expensive because the price of eggs. But no, that's what we'll be doing because we are never too old for Easter. And probably tomorrow morning I will wake up to Easter baskets in our tree from my mom because she does it every year. My husband is 50. You're never too old for an Easter basket from your mom. Okay. So that's what we'll be doing because we need to have some kind of normalcy in our lives. So happy Easter to everyone who celebrates. And is Passover still happening? Is it over?
Passover, I think, is over tonight. I'm going to have so much bread because I've not been eating any pasta all week. So I'm going to go gorge some sort of.
You're going to carve out tonight, Julie. And
I can't wait.
Yes.
And everybody, happy Easter to all people, everybody who celebrates. Have a great Easter weekend. Stay safe, and let's play this amazing ad that you guys did.
Oh, and thank you to everyone who voted for American Girl.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
The voting is over now, but you guys have been amazing. You voted for us. We didn't know we were in second. We dropped to second place at the final, right before the final day. So we were neck and neck, very competitive with the WNBA and Disney. And so we find out on Tuesday whether we won the People's Choice Award or not. So, and then whether the judges picked us. So we'll know next time we do Over It, we'll know whether American Girl won or not. But thank you everyone who voted for us. We so appreciate that. Hopefully we got it at the end, but we'll see. Either way, it's an honor and a win.
There's still a winner ad that everybody should watch on repeat because it is as true and relevant today as it was when you made it before the election. Even more so.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Julie. All right. Here's our ad with Hold the Line. Thank Marcus, and check out Marcus Flowers and Hold the Line and support them if you can. They're doing great work to get good Democrats elected. And here is our latest new ad from Seneca Project. He's for them.
Did you ever think when you voted for President Trump that things were going to cost you more?
I never thought I was going to lose this much money, this fast.
The president says he doesn't care.
Couldn't care less if they raised prices.
The Trump cabinet has more billionaires than any in history.
People are being laid off.
Double the number of job losses.
It's very hard to find a job right now.
Largest one-day gain in the history of the Bloomberg Billionaires Index.
I find that I do better in bad markets.
The stock soars 21%.
A small business like mine will be out of business before the end of the year.
VA cuts already taking a toll on veterans' health care. Social Security offices are being closed.
It's scary.
If you are big tech CEOs who gave big, you are glad you did that.
Largest tax cuts,
which go to the wealthiest 0.1%.
Everyone's lost how much money in their 401k and he's golfing?
Destroying people's lives for no reason.
He made $2.5 billion today and he made $900 million.